Relative contributions of myostatin and the IGF-1 axis. Today I'm going to explain why there may be some benefits in having low IGF-1 and how it can actually help you build more muscle. I think that there is a balance between androgens in general, specifically GH and IGF-1 and myostatin. And if we take a look here, there's a study, relative contributions of myostatin and the IGF-1 axis in body composition and muscle strength. Myostatin, a negative regulator of muscle growth, in other words, something that suppresses muscle growth. Myostatin is our checks and balances to keep us from getting too big. So we want to lower myostatin so that we can continue to grow. I mean, it's been proven time and time again that the longer that you're on a cycle and the heavier the cycle is, the lower or the higher your myostatin levels go in response. In this study, we investigate the interaction between myostatin and the growth hormone insulin-like growth factor 1 axis in muscle function and strength. To this end, we measured hind limb strength and myostatin levels in 2 mouse models of GH gene manipulation. GH receptor knockout mice which have reduced GH IGF-1 action, in other words, mice that have been genetically altered to have very, very low or no GH IGF-1 production. Reduced GH IGF-1 action. And bovine GH transgenic mice which have excess GH IGF-1 action. We found that specific muscle force was significantly reduced in BGH mice and significantly increased in the GHR negative mice. In other words, when they had excess GH IGF-1 expression, they were weaker. And when they had lower IGF-1 expression, they were actually quite a bit stronger. I've had a theory about this. I've mentioned it before. I can't remember which video it was. But Leo in longevity, rest in peace. Here's a guy who, through testing, found that genetically his IGF-1 response to GH was extremely low. So he could take a lot of GH and have almost no IGF-1. So essentially, he was like one of these mice that have very low IGF-1 expression. And what was interesting about Leo was that even though, like in this picture here, you can see that he's very slim, okay? This is his wife, who's a very slender person herself, and he looks quite small. Of course, he's wearing all black. At this time, I don't believe he was doing any kind of training. He was into anti-aging, hence the name Leo in longevity. And so he was probably actively trying to, downsize and stay slim. But later on, we see this picture here. This is after he had gotten back into training. I think he just got bored and wanted to train again and was taking a little bit of testosterone. Nothing crazy. I think he went up to 400 milligrams a week. That's not nothing, but it's nothing bizarre for a bodybuilder, a gym rat. And he just blew up. I mean, there is literally 50, 60 pounds of difference, I would say here. I mean, if he's around 6 foot tall, I don't know how tall he was, but let's say he's 6 foot tall, he's like $140, $150 here if he's lucky. Over here, he's like, easily looks like he's 215, 220. So it didn't take much for him to have a huge growth spurt, and he was strong no matter how skinny he was or how big he was. So I had the question, does fasting reduce myostatin? And yes, it does. Okay, but in a strange way, as this study points out. Myostatin, which inhibits muscle mass growth, so something we don't want, it remained stable during fasting, but dropped significantly during refeed. So as soon as they started eating again, their myostatin levels tanked. And it doesn't happen, that kind of fluctuation doesn't happen without the stimulus of the fasting. And it's well known that during prolonged fast, your IGF-1 levels go down. But it's also well known that during a fast, once you get into hard ketosis, you don't lose muscle, at least for the first 10 days, 12 days, something like that. For the first 4 days, if you're not in ketosis, you're going to lose muscle. So always get into ketosis if you're going to do a long fast. Do that for 5 to 7 days before the fast. Then you're a lot less likely to lose any muscle at all. I love fasting for fat loss. It's so simple, direct, and quick, and I don't lose muscle. It has a lot of other health benefits. But anyway, let's get back to this. Decreased myostatin was positively correlated with reduction in total cholesterol. There was no change in circulating follistatin concentration in response to the diet intervention. And what we're reading here is a calorie-reduced diet study. And they showed that myostatin decreased by 17.6% in response to the diet. This is my little diagram here. It's been sitting here the whole time. You've got, and this is my teeter-totter that I'm illustrating. The more androgens, insulin, and IGF-1 that you take in or stimulate through food and training, the higher your myostatin goes up in order to protect your body from becoming too large. But the lower, so the more we take out IGF-1, insulin, androgens, and let's say calories, the lighter the scale gets on that side and the myostatin goes down, which leads in its own way to more muscle growth in the future. And like we said, we know that with a bulk cycle or a PED assisted bulk cycle, myostatin levels go up and up and up and up until you're not gaining anymore. So we know there's a plateau that's hit with the drugs, and we know that there's a plateau hit without the drugs. Myostatin may have a significant role in both of those. So what's the solution? Well, fasting or fasting mimicking. And what is one of the main components of fasting mimicking would be using metformin or berberine to actually squash the mTOR pathway to create fasting mimicking. It also lowers IGF-1. I've been taking metformin off and on here and there as needed for years, but not consistently, like every day. It's like a cleanup thing, or to get into ketosis or pre-contest, that sort of thing. But I started taking it regularly, just 250 milligrams at night during my bulk, just a couple of weeks ago. And over the course of 7 days of taking it that way at night, even with added calories, I slimmed down like 2 or 3 pounds. And I overcame that by adding more and more calories to try to combat that. When I started the berberine, I switched to the berberine, and I take the berberine 3 times a day, morning, noon, night, essentially. And with that, back down another 3 pounds, same type of way. Now, I don't believe I'm losing muscle by any means. My muscles, I'm not going to take my shirt off and show you. There's not any reference point, but it looks like I'm doing keto, essentially, and I feel like I'm on keto. My thinking is clear, except for this time of night for other reasons, but it's just like being on keto as far as the pumps go, as far as like the leanness look. I mean, I was already fat before I started any of this, so I've actually reduced fat in the last 2-3 weeks or so of my bulk while trying to eat. I've been eating anywhere from a very low of 3,600 calories up to like 5,500 calories a day. So an average of over 4,000 calories a day. And I've actually lost fat. One parallel I'd like to draw is the muscle car to race car comparison. And to quote Colin Chapman, my philosophy is simplify and add lightness. And here's how we're going to do that with this sort of thing. Instead of taking a car that has 200 horsepower, so instead of taking a car that's got 200 horsepower and weighs 3,000 pounds, this is the muscle car approach. We're going to add a supercharger. We're going to add maybe even a turbocharger, right? So now we're going to be making 450 horsepower to the wheels. But because of that, we need to upgrade the clutch and maybe even the drive axles. And then, why don't we add a little bit more? So then we add some nitrous. And then we're making 600 horsepower at a pop, right? At that point, the chassis is going to start to give out on us, so we need to strengthen that up. Bop, 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 bop. Next thing you know, this thing's making 600 horsepower, but it weighs 4,000 plus pounds. Now, that's going to cause the brakes to fail, so we need to upgrade the brakes. That's going to affect the handling, so we need to upgrade the suspension. Do you see where I'm going with this? This is the rabbit trail we go down when we start adding in PEDs to drive our results, okay? Let's take a different tact. Forget all that. We're starting at 200 horsepower again. All right, same car, same baseline. Now, when we take something that suppresses our IGF-1 response and, as a result, decreases our myostatin, it allows us to go where we want to go. And I'll show you how. So we're not going to add a supercharger. We're not going to change anything. The drive line stays the same. The 200 horsepower stays the same because we're staying natural, essentially, right? So no extra juice. So what are we going to do? All right, we're going to go through and we're going to take out all the sound deadening equipment. We're going to remove the back seat. We're going to remove the passenger seat. We're going to take out any unnecessary bits and pieces. We're going to take the front fender, hood, and bumper off and put a one-piece lightweight fiberglass replacement on it. We're going to lighten this car up. And this car that weighed 3,000 pounds is now going to weigh, we can probably shave 900 pounds off of that. You see what we ended up with? Almost 10 pounds per horsepower. And it was 15 pounds before. So now it's going to be more lithe. The suspension it already has is going to be able to do its job that much easier. The brakes it already has are going to be able to be less stressed around corners and whenever you may need to use them. So now you don't have to add anything. You don't have to change anything. You're just getting better results out of what you already have. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to maximize our natural potential, which is going to lead to actually better health, better function. And that's the approach we're going to take. We're going to simplify and add lightness. Now, how does this translate into better muscle growth? The lower your myostatin is, the more your body has an open road. If your energy levels are good, if your heart is good, if you're in good health and you're training well, and you've got the right calories coming in and the right balance, you're going to be a lean, mean training machine. But your myostatin's low now. So now the potential that you already had is increased because there's not a roadblock in your way. Now you can move under your own power. Now what you already have can do that much better. If you're on TRT or you are enhanced, you can strategically leverage that to springboard results, okay? The rebound effect, the post-contest effect. We're going to actually suppress our IGF-1 temporarily with berberine or metformin. There are ways to kind of reset and reduce your myostatin levels, which in the long term leads to greater leaps forward versus nothing year after year after year. You know who I'm talking to. Most guys in the gym are not making any progress. You've got to change something to see different results, right? That's all I've got for today.